Haven't done this before, but going live here for the first time. If there's technical difficulties, if you can't hear me, just let me know in the chat. But I believe that we are up and running. Just give this 1 second here to catch up. All right, here we go. Today, we are going to be working on writing a CFML API wrapper for a Lord of the Rings API. That's not what I want to do there. There we go. So let's, we can just do this with Safari here. It's fine. Let's go over here. We will grab, oops, let's go to notebook. All right. What do I need here? Grab that URL. All right, so the API we're going to be messing around with is Safari. Should have had that prepped. The one API, welcome to the one API to rule them all. This I stumbled across on GitHub and thought it would be a fun API to use for practicing writing Cold Fusion API, a Cold Fusion API wrapper. Now, of course, I've lost my mouse. That's not at all helpful. I think we briefly see how we're doing here, OBS. I think, are we back online? I think we briefly lost the stream there, but I believe that we're back now. All right, Lord of the Rings API wrapper. The tool that we're going to be using to write this API wrapper you can find on ForgeBox. It's an API wrapper template. Just search API, it might come up first. Let me see here. It is, yes. So this API wrapper template, I wrote a couple years back prior to a conference at Into the Box, and I used it to quickly spin up API wrappers. So we're going to use this. Hop over to the command line here, spin up command box, which probably should have also had up and running prior to this. I'm using the release candidate for command box 5, and I don't have much installed in it now. So we're going to install that API wrapper template, which is a command box module. So it'll download it, it'll install it, and then it'll restart the shell so that we can use it. Okay, here, so we installed the API wrapper template. Now we are going to use it, we're going to walk through it to write the wrapper for the API. So it installs a namespace API wrapper, scaffold, and there's a wizard that we'll use that will walk us through entering the elements that we need to wrap this API. So we'll call it Lord of the Rings API because that's what it is. We need the endpoint for the API, so that's going to be a matter of going to the docs. Oops, there's my key, so expose that. Let's hop to the docs of the API and find the endpoint. Here it is. And we'll enter that here. Oops, well, added an extra dot there. I'll have to clean that up once it does it. If you look at the docs, you'll see that you need an API key. So of the various types of authentication, they use an API key and basic auth. So in the wrapper, we will say that we're going to use API key authentication. We're going to enter the URL for the docs because if you're writing an API wrapper, knowing where the documentation is and sharing that is important. A name for this, we'll call it LOTR CFC. A description. we're going to say one API to rule them all, and this is the wrapper to use them. Just kidding. So CFML wrapper for all the. Actually, I haven't looked at what this API provides. The rings goodness you need. All right, so that's our description. I'm the author. I had that prepped. I do want to generate a box.json so we can put this on ForgeBox, and it spun that up. So what happened here? I don't know. You can kind of see on the screen here. Probably should have zoomed in a little more, but it used those values that I input, the API name and stuff, spun them all up, used a template to spin that stuff over. So it made this folder in the directory that I was in, Lord of the Rings API wrapper, within LOTR CFC folder. And then it passed the information in to create a package that we can use on ForgeBox. That option, you don't need to create a ForgeBox package when you're using this wrapper, but it's nice to share it with others, and that step makes it easy to do that. So that all got spun up, and if we do ls, we'll see that, oops, oh, there it is. There's the Lord of the Rings API wrapper. We can CD into it, see what we have in there, and I'm going to open this up in VS Code so that we can start poking around in it. All right, so that did not open the directory that I was in, did it? Come on, code. That's weird, and I feel like that's not a command box issue. I feel like that's a VS Code issue. So we're going to try this one last time. It's the definition of stupidity, doing the same thing over and over again. All right. Not is code being strange here? For some reason, VS Code isn't opening a folder. And there we go. All right. Thank you, code. So you'll see that the wrapper, you'll see that the wrapper spun up an index.cfm and a server JSON within this Lord of the Rings API wrapper folder. This is kind of a high level project folder where you can spin up a server and mess around with the API, but it's not the actual wrapper that you're writing. That's going to be within the LOTR CFC folder. Because we had that package equals true, it generated a box.json for us, which we can fill out a little bit more as we get going with this. But the bulk of our API wrapper is going to be this Lord of the Rings API.cfc. So we'll get rid of the extra period that we added there. Because it was API key authentication, you'll see that we have that set. Now, what I want to do, I also want to add a .env file here because we'll be using that to pass in our credentials. I have the template set up so that you'll see here in the start of it that if your env variables are present, it'll pick them up so that you don't need to hard code your API keys and stuff into your repository. And that's the generated name that it looks for the environment variables. Obviously, we could change that to be anything that we want. We'll put that there ourselves. And I am going to go back to Safari, and I'm going to move this off the screen so that I can get that API key. Okay, move you over, count, got my API key, I'm going to put that in there. All right, so that's in my environment variables. Now, in command box, if we want to use those environment variables with the server, we're going to want to install the .env, command box.env, command box module. That's by Eric Peterson, which sets it so that command box will pick up those env files and load those key values into, I think it's the Java system properties, so that we can use them. So that's going to reload. Let's hop back to our API here. All right, we'll go to our index. Get rid of that. We're going to start messing around with this component. We don't need to pass in the API key. We've got that set in the environment variables. All right, so we are ready to start coding. When the shell reloads here, we'll spin up a server, and then we'll start looking at the API endpoints that are available and writing our wrapper for it. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Make sure that everything with the stream is working. I believe it is. All right. Okay. Now the server.json that's populated by default, I think it's Adobe Cold Fusion 2018. You could use Lucy, you could use a different version of Cold Fusion. It's really just a matter of personal preference here. So we'll use that Adobe 2018, and we'll spin up a server where we can start messing around with the API wrapper that we generated. All right, let's hop into the code here. Actually, we don't need to hop into the code. Let's get that spun up first. It'll probably break. That server start. Oh, here we go. Coming up now. All right. Server is coming up, but there's nothing on that index, which is good. Didn't break. Oh, there we go. I really dumped that key there, so I'm gonna have to rescind that. That's fine. Docs. All right, so here are the endpoints that this API has. So the basic endpoint is book. It doesn't need an API key, but easy enough to start with that, and it's going to list all of the Lord of the Rings books. So we'll hop in here. There's a bunch of commented out methods to get you started. We don't need most of them, but we will use the list one. All right, list books. So we're going to make this method named list books because it's returning an array, and it's a get to the books endpoint. And then we can hop on that index there. Let's a little more space, and let's just dump. You know what? Let's make this LOTR, and we'll dump LOTR.listBooks just to see what we got. All right, not found. That's a new one. All right, so because it's book, and I wrote books because, you know, books would have made sense for that endpoint, but I'm not judging them. They made the API, not me. All right, so here we go. That call to the API, we're already up and running. That call to the API returned this data, and what it returned was an array of 3 books: the Fellowship of the Ring, the 2 Towers, and the Return of the King, along with the IDs that they have. It looks like this API also returns an items element that lists the total and the number of pages. And so, you know, you can implement paging with the API can zoom in here so you can see what we got back. So we're in. We've made our first endpoint there. Let's see what other endpoints we can put together here. We'll go back to the docs. Docs have book/ID, so that's getting something by a specific ID. Ooh, they even have chapter. This is crazy. All right, book ID. Actually, so what I'm going to do in here, I'm going to uncomment this stuff to get my template for getting by ID, because that to being easier. Oops. And I lost my list books. That's fine. All right, we already know how to do it. List books. List books. Get book. That one's good. Now we're going to do a get, and it's just going to retrieve a single book by ID, get book, string. Do we call it an ID? Let's see what terminology they call it an ID. Okay. Required string ID, return AV all get book ID. All right, so we know, let's grab one of those IDs. We know that this is the Fellowship of the Ring ID. So, Fellowship. So then we're going to dump LOTR dot get book and see what they have for getting a book by the ID. Boom. Well, it really doesn't give you a lot of data. I'm not sure exactly why they have that endpoint, but it worked. So the get book by ID works. Let's see what else we can do in the API. Of a specific book is book ID chapter. We're going to deny that for now. This is, I'm not sure what that is. And OBS quit again, which I really can't be bothered with trying to figure out right now. So we're just going to move on to listing chapters. List chapters by book. And we'll call it list chapters by book. And like get book, it's going to take the string of the book, and its endpoint is going to be like that, but what /chapter? Let's find out what's going on here. All right, request all chapters of one specific book, book ID chapter. Okay, list chapters by book, book ID chapter. So let's check this out here. We'll dump LOTR dot list chapters by book, and we'll pass in that fellowship ID and see what chapters we have here. All right. Well, is there more current one? Okay, so there's more than one page. 22 results came back, and it looks like for those chapters, they just give you an ID, which is so strange. Is there something where we can find out what those chapters are? This chapter, list all book chapters, and then this chapter ID, request one specific book chapter. I just want to look a little bit more here in the docs and see. what data is coming back here? Massive data books, all about the blah. We need JSON. Those are the endpoints. About. That's what they're using. We could buy them a coffee. All about that. So that returns the book. I mean, if it's only returning an ID for the chapter, that's not the most. Can we get, all right, let's just see. Let's see what happens when we make a call to get a chapter by the chapter's ID. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, if you're just getting identifiers for these chapters, that's not terribly helpful. Or terribly interesting. Not much you can do to mess around with that. Retrieve a single chapter by ID function. Get chapter, and the endpoint that's going to is chapter, and it passes in the ID. Right, chapter, yeah. All right. LOTR get chapter by ID. And we'll need to get one of those. We need to get the IDs for one of those chapters, which is going to be here. So, okay, chapter ID. So it's chapter 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring. I'm really hoping here that by passing this in, we get some actual helpful. Oh, there we go. Didn't save that. I just called it get chapter. Right, get chapter, get chapter. Save that. Okay, that's just bizarre to me. A little confused here. Maybe the chapters aren't the strongest point of this API. Just gonna hop over to GitHub and see what else they say here. No issues, 3 branches, endpoint. I wonder if they have the the actual information that we're querying from the API here in the repository. Books. Oh, here we go. Okay, chapters. Super big. I guess it's downloaded the that. Let's take a look at this in Finder. Move that off the screen. And try to open that VS Code if it lets me. Right now it's not letting me open that with VS Code. Interesting. Let's try this again. Let's force it. Oh, interesting. All right, so that wasn't particularly helpful. It looks like there's more info than they're returning back, though, with these API calls. JSON, books metadata JSON. So one of the things that I like to do if I'm a little bit confused about what's going on with an API is see if there's another API wrapper for it. So I'm just going to do LOTR API wrapper just to see what else there is out there. Well, there's my live coding right now, which is the top result in DuckDuckGo. That's hysterical. I don't think there is. It was a fairly small one. All right, well, let's response format for all data sets is JSON. You need an access key. We're using the token. All right, you know, maybe we should make sure that our token's getting passed in. Let's hit that movie endpoint to make sure that our token is being accepted. Make list movies. Doesn't need to be capitalized. Silly. So list movies is gonna be a get to wait. Let's check this out. To what? To movie. So we're big on singulars here. All right. MOVIE. List movies. And we'll dump this on the index. LTR.list movies. All right, so that's returning a little bit more information, and that means our authentication is actually getting passed into the API, which itself is good, but I'm confused about those. I'm really confused about those book chapters because that just seems, it seems like there should be more information coming back from that API. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to make sure that it's not the wrapper messing anything up, I think I'm just going to hop into Postman here and make a get to that API. Yes, sorry, just getting started with a little snitch and have to keep authorizing it. All right, so we can get rid of these. Don't save any of them. All right, let's make a get to the API slash, what are we going to do here? Let's do that book ID chapter. This chapters by book. So it was slash book ID slash chapter slash book slash ID slash chapter. And just see if, no, so Postman's returning the same thing. Interesting. So Postman's returning the same thing back to us that did. So that chapter information, I don't know, I'm gonna have to dig a little bit deeper there, but just doesn't seem, you know, particularly interesting. The movie endpoints do. It seems like they've got a little bit of more information. We'll do get movie here. So you'll see too that with these API wrappers that you end up just following a pattern for all of the resources. And it ends up being very easy to write the wrapper for them. So get movie, let's grab one of those IDs that we had. This is the Lord of the Rings series, the Hobbit series. Let's do the Battle of the Five Armies. No, let's do the Fellowship of the Ring, since we did that before. Oops. All right, so this is again Fellowship. for reference. And that's there. And we'll see how that looks when routines cannot be declared more than once. Did I rename it? Get movie. I did not rename it. Okay, so we got it. Now it does look like the information that we're getting back from that is basically the same as what we were getting back from the from the array that listed the movies. I thought maybe there would be some more information in there. All right, so let's jump down to quotes because that seems pretty cool, and maybe we'll be able to pin those quotes into movies. All right, list movies. We'll do list quotes. I'm really glad that OBS hasn't quit on me in 10 minutes. All right, list quotes. Is it going to be singular? It's probably going to be singular. List quote. All right, QOTE. Oops. All right, list quotes. Get to quote. All right. List quotes and see how that looks. Gonna be a lot of quotes, it looks like. Deagle. So we got, so I guess we have a character reference here, movie too, and quotes. So I guess all of this ties together. So we could probably look up the character and the movie and present all that information with the quotes. All right, so this is kind of fun. How many quotes do we have here? Ooh, long list. How many? Whoa, this is okay. So this is where the bulk of the API is. Looks like it's almost all of the quotes from the movies. All right, which is pretty cool. Okay, so there is something neat here. Quote and ID will give us a specific movie quote. So we'll do get quote, obviously, to keep filling out these API resources. All right, retrieve a single quote by ID, get quote. String ID goes to the quote endpoint. You need to actually look at what one of these quotes is. Let's get a good one. We don't want to do it with a boring one. Bunch of Gollum Schmeagol quotes here. That one's just a little weird. Taste of bread, Gollum. Oh, we need to find a Gandalf quote. Here we go. Let's go. You shall. Do we have "You shall not pass"? There we go. Classic quote. All right, got the ID here. All right, on the index. Here's our quote with its ID. And we already have our get quote by ID, so we'll just make sure that it works. Get quote. Oh, we don't really even need by ID. Do we call it by ID? No, we just say get quote. Get quote, and we'll pass that in to make sure that that works. And we did get it. All right, so let's just see what endpoints we didn't hit yet. Character. We got to do the character and the quotes by movie and the quotes by character. All right, so we've almost done the whole API here. Let's do that list characters one. List quotes. And we will list characters, list characters, get. I'm not even going to look now. I know that it's singular because they're all singular, list characters. Index, we'll do list characters. Take a look at how that plays out. Nice. Whoa. Okay, so another point where there is just a lot of Lord of the Rings information. In case you didn't know, Telkar was a dwarf who was born and died in the First Age. Wow. Crazy. All right. Super extensive Lord of the Rings character information. I enjoy the Lord of the Rings, but this is next level here, I guess, with the Lord of the Rings Wikia information. All right, so we're listing characters. We're going to find Gandalf because we have to. There he is. Gandalf, hair, gray, later white. Gandalf the gray, Gandalf the white. Birth before the shaping of Arda. All right, nice. All right, so here's Gandalf's ID. Got this line working. We'll just mention this. This is Gandalf. And now we'll do a get character, quote. Almost done here, single. So I think I see how this all ties together. You can use those IDs to build up your own more extensive view of a particular quote or movie. It's really up to you. There are things in there that have a lot of information. Get character ID. So let's test that out. Get character. Confirm that we got Gandalf. And we did. All right, so book ID, book chapter, movie. So movie ID quote we did not do, and character ID quote we did not do. So that would be, what pattern are we going to follow for those? It's going to be like this. And it is going to be list quotes by movie. So we'll hop in here. And we can do it down here. Might want to reorganize where we put these different things and kind of organize them by assets, by resources. List quotes by movie. Did I write quotes there? Is that a Q? It is. List quotes by movie. List quotes by movie. And that's going to be quote, or not, probably movie. Movie ID quote. Movie ID quote. Movie ID quote. All right. List quotes by movie. tr.lord, hello, tr.list quotes by movie. We'll grab that fellowship movie quote that we had, fellowship movie. Get all the quotes from the Fellowship of the Ring. Sure enough, we got them. She died. Sauron, Lord of Earth. All right. And the last one we need to do is character ID quote. So it's going to be list quote by character. Oops. All right. And you'll see once again, it's really just following the pattern here. List quotes by character. List quotes by actor. And that is character. Why bother typing? We'll just test it out here. List quotes by character, grab Gandalf's ID, and confirm that it works. And it does. We've got all of the quotes from Gandalf. Okay, so we've hit every endpoint on this API. We've written a wrapper for each of those. Now, it's 9:15, so I got like 15 more minutes, maybe a little bit less than that. Let's try to get this up on ForgeBox and up on GitHub. I'm going to create a, back to the terminal. Oops. Haven't been in the terminal in a while. We'll hop over that directory, go to the rings wrapper. So like I said, that top level directory, I generally use that just for messing around. The real repository is that, this is what I'm going to put in version control. So we've got all of that stuff in there. Git add all. Oops, get init. Git add all. Git status. Commit. Actual commit. Now I didn't do documentation yet, so I'm going to do a little bit of that as well, but I'm going to push it up to GitHub in a second just so that I have it up there. I'm going to make the repository on GitHub first. I'm going to call it LOTR CFML wrapper for the LOTR API. Public. Create repository, and then they're going to give me the code to push that up. I copy it. I believe I did. Yes. All right, so we are up on GitHub. Let's just add, a smidgen of documentation to this API. So we'll hop back into code. We'll open up that README. Move that out for right now. Actually, we will leave that. I'm not a huge fan of this table of contents. Following is a minimal example of doing something helpful. Okay, LMTR. So we'll take one of those examples that we did, maybe the list quotes, since that was one of the most impressive. And that is how someone would quickly spin it up to list the quotes. All right, now we're going to do our reference manual with what all of the functions are that we have. So let's just move this over to the right and hop in here. And we'll just document what we wrote here. All right, list movies. This is, when people go to a repository, at least when I go to a repository, you need a little bit of documentation. List, we're doing list movies. List movies. There's not really much more I can say about that. Was that the first one we had? No, we had list books first. List books. Then list quotes. And let's tell people there are a lot of them. Next, we've got list characters, and we can say that again. List characters. Again, very extensive with in-depth information. We'll do our get book method. Get a book by ID, returns the same information as seen in the list method, just so that people don't expect anything more than what's already there. And then we'll be repeating this pattern for get movie and get quote, right? Get quote didn't, none of them return more than you see in the list, really. I don't think. We'll look at get quote again in a second. All right, let's just take a look there at, did I do get quote? I did. Let's just see what it looked like. I don't remember. Yeah, it was the same. Okay, so the same. But we can mention that it includes the movie and the character. Includes the ID of the movie and character. All right, that was get quote. Now we're going to do get character. Get character. It really does seem like the quotes are at the heart of this API wrapper. And the chapters are the current weak point. I'm not quite sure. Unless there's references, maybe in the, did the quotes have a chapter reference? No, just the character in the movie, not the chapter because it's not from the books. Okay. Let's just move get chapter up to the other get methods. Did we didn't add our list chapters up there, did we? Where's list chapters? Oh, maybe there wasn't one. Maybe it was only by book. Okay. So we just added get chapter. Gets a chapter by ID. Currently does not include any much information. Maybe someone else could explain to me the purpose of that that endpoint. Get chapter, then we got list chapters by book. All right, we're cruising through here. Lists all chapters in a book. Well, at least it tells you how many chapters there are. And then slightly more relevant and interesting would be list quotes by movie, list all quotes in the movie, and list quotes by character. List all quotes by a character. All right. So just do code. I don't want that over here. I need to move this off the screen for a sec because I'm pulling up. You know what? I could have done this from there we go. I want to add an acknowledgement for John Burquest because a lot of the API wrapper code that I use started with some templates that he put together. So I'm going to add that in here. That and that seemed fine for the reference manual. So we're going to hop into our box JSON. And we can fill this out in a little more depth later, but we'll put this at version 1. Okay, we'll hop back to iTerm, get status, get add, readme, document, methods, and add acknowledgement. Can't spell it, DD. I think that's acknowledgement. And then I believe the only thing I did in the actual API wrapper was move the methods around. So we'll say reorganize methods. And then initial release. Push that up. We'll tag it. Tag -a v1.0.0 initial release. Git push origin v. Oops, that's not helpful. So that's pushed up. And then I believe if we hop into box here, we can publish that, and it will be done in less than an hour. Let's just confirm this. All right. All right, we're just gonna say, come on. Hop up here, and it is live on ForgeBox with our methods. Oopsie. Looks like we ended up with a slightly, because of that. And let's just tighten up our box.json a little bit. I'll add in my info for the author, since we have slightly, we'll grab that, I didn't even put that it was on GitHub. Let's hop over to GitHub. We'll see the repo there as well. LOTR CFC. So this is where bugs will be reported. Come on. Bugs will go here. Wow, we didn't. We're going to update the location. All right. Let's see. 1 second here. Sorry. All right, we'll update the location. And it's currently 1, and that does not need that. Bugs, short description, we'll do some keywords in here. LOTR, LOTR, and API. It's an MIT license. So we'll put that in. We'll probably do this all in a more automatic way. All right. Oh, we'll put the, that's good enough for now. So with that, we fixed that. Okay. Quick command box for a sec. Get status. Fix typo. Add. Fill out box.json further. And then we're going to bump it for those changes. And now I'm not using the the fancy bump method yet, but we'll do that another time. Bump for fixes, push that up, and then once again we'll republish. There we go. Publish. Okay, so we should have 2 versions live here. 1.01, we know the MIT license, all set up. Get the bug link, don't have the project link there yet. We'll do that, and that last endpoint is fixed up. All right, so that'll do it for now. It's been an hour. We put together a whole API wrapper and published it on ForgeBox, not without hiccups in the live stream, but overall, I think that went pretty well. So thanks those who tagged along.